I spent every Mother's Day alone. No calls, no flowers, no card. Then 3 weeks later, my phone rang. They didn't say, "Happy Mother's Day." They said, "Mom, we need money." And what I did next changed everything. Before we begin, if you believe mothers deserve respect, not excuses, subscribe to this channel, like this video, like and comment "Moms Matter" if you've ever been taken for granted. Now let me tell you what really happened. Mother's Day fell on a Sunday that year. The weather was perfect, the kind of soft spring warmth that makes neighbors grill in their backyards and kids ride bikes up and down the street. Every house on my block had balloons tied to mailboxes, pink ones, purple ones. Some even had big signs that read, "Happy Mother's Day." Mine didn't. I woke up early, like I always do. Not because anyone needed me anymore. Old habits just die hard. I made coffee for one, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at my phone. No notifications. I told myself not to expect anything. I'd learned that lesson years ago. Still, hope has a way of sneaking in quietly. I checked my messages again. Nothing. By 9 in the morning, my neighbor Linda knocked on my door, holding a small bouquet of daisies. "Happy Mother's Day," she said brightly. I smiled and thanked her, pretending everything was fine. She didn't know my kids hadn't called. She didn't know they hadn't even sent a text. I raised 3 children, mostly on my own. Their father left when the youngest was 5. I worked double shifts, skipped meals, wore the same coat for 10 winters so they could have new ones. I never missed a school play, never forgot a birthday, never once said, "That's too expensive," when it came to then. But somehow, I became optional. By noon, social media was flooded with posts. "Best mom ever. Couldn't have done life without you. So blessed to have my mother." I closed the app. Around 2, I reheated leftovers and ate standing at the counter. The silence in the house felt heavier than usual, like it knew what day it was and wanted to remind me. I told myself, maybe they're planning something later. They weren't. By evening, the truth settled in. Calm, quiet, undeniable. They forgot me. Not because they didn't know it was Mother's Day, but because remembering me wasn't a priority. I went to bed early that night. Not crying, just tired. The kind of tired that lives deeper than the body. The next morning, life went on. And so did I. I didn't call them to complain. Didn't post anything passive-aggressive. Didn't remind them what the day meant. I stayed silent. Because sometimes silence tells you exactly where you stand. 3 weeks later, on a Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was my oldest son. "Hey, Mom." No apology, no mention of Mother's Day. Just, hey. We exchanged a few surface-level words. Weather, work, nothing real. Then came the pause, the one I recognized immediately. "So listen," he said, clearing his throat. "I was hoping you could help me out." I leaned back in my chair. "Help how?" I asked calmly. "Well, things are tight right now. Rent went up, and I'm short this month." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed again, a text from my daughter. "Mom, are you free to talk? It's important, important." I answered her call next. She didn't waste time either. "Mom, I hate to ask, but I'm in a bind. I just need a little money. I'll pay you back, I swear." By the end of the day, all 3 of them had reached out. Not to check on me, not to say sorry, not to ask how I was doing, but to ask for money. And that's when something inside me finally snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. They didn't forget me. They remembered me exactly when they needed something. I didn't answer any of them right away. Instead, I opened my calendar and circled one date in red. Because what I did next wasn't revenge. It was a lesson. One they would never forget. I didn't respond to any of them that night. Not because I didn't have the money, not because I was angry, but because I finally allowed myself to look backward without excuses. I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook, the same one I used to write grocery lists and doctor appointments, and I started remembering. The first time it happened, I brushed it off. My daughter skipped my birthday 2 years ago, said she was busy with work. A week later, she called crying because her car needed repairs. I transferred the money without hesitation. The second time, my youngest son forgot Thanksgiving. No call, no text. But he remembered me in January when his credit card was maxed out. And my oldest, he hadn't visited in almost a year. But every few months, there was always a reason he needed help. Rent, utilities, just until next paycheck. Each time I told myself, that's what mothers do. Each time I swallowed the disappointment. Each time I felt a little smaller. By the time I reached the last page of the notebook, my hands were shaking. Not from anger, but from realization. This wasn't accidental. It was habitual. They had learned something over the years. Something I had unknowingly taught them, that no matter how invisible I felt, no matter how ignored I would still show up with my wallet open. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. A group text this time. Oldest son, Mom, did you see my message? Daughter, please call me when you can. Youngest, I really need help. It's urgent. Urgent. Funny how I was never urgent. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing anything back. Finally, I wrote, I'm thinking about it. We'll talk soon. That was it. No explanation, no apology, no check sent. And for the first time in my life as a mother, I didn't feel guilty. Instead, I felt strangely calm. Later that afternoon, I went out for a walk. The same neighbors were still cleaning up leftover Mother's Day decorations. A few balloons had deflated and lay tangled in bushes. I realized something uncomfortable but freeing. I had spent years teaching my children that my needs were optional. I was the emergency fund, the backup plan, the safety net that never moved. They didn't mean to hurt me, but they didn't mean not to either. That evening, my oldest son finally called again. Mom, what's going on? He asked, his tone already frustrated. You usually help me out right away. Usually. I know, I replied evenly. That's why I'm taking time to think. There was a pause. Is something wrong? He asked. I almost laughed. Something had been wrong for a long time. I just hadn't said it out loud. I noticed something, I said slowly. None of you called me on Mother's Day. Silence. Then he exhaled sharply. Mom, that was weeks ago. Yes, I said. And now you're calling. Another pause. This one heavier. Well, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, he muttered. You know we love you. Love. Such a small word, so easy to say, so hard to show. I'm not saying you don't, I replied. I'm saying I'm tired of being remembered only when you need money. His voice changed. Are you seriously holding this against us? He snapped. We're family. Family. The word people use when they want forgiveness without accountability. I'm not holding anything, I said. I'm just paying attention. He scoffed. So you're not helping me? I didn't say that, I replied. I said we'd talk. He hung up shortly after. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because things were resolved, but because for the first time, I wasn't running to fix something that wasn't mine to fix. The next day, my daughter came over unannounced. She looked tired, stressed, a little annoyed. Mom, why are you making this difficult? She asked as soon as she walked in. I poured 2 glasses of water and sat across from her. Why do you think I am? I asked. She hesitated. I mean, you always help. I don't understand why this time is different. There it was. Different, because I finally was. I want to ask you something, I said calmly. Why didn't you call me on Mother's Day? She looked down. I forgot. That's okay, I replied. But you didn't forget my number today. She didn't answer. I don't need gifts, I continued. I don't need flowers. But I do need respect. Her eyes filled slightly, but her voice hardened. So what, you're punishing us? No, I said gently. I'm changing. She left shortly after that, frustrated and confused. But I wasn't confused anymore. That night, I made a decision. If they wanted money, they were going to get something else first. Something they hadn't given me in a long time. Time, effort, and honesty. And when I finally told them my conditions, I didn't announce my decision right away. I let it sit. For years, I had rushed to solve their problems before they even finished explaining them. This time, I allowed the discomfort to linger. For them, not me. By Friday, all 3 of my kids were restless. The group chat lit up again. That last message made me smile. Because that's exactly what I intended to do. I replied with a single sentence. Come over Sunday afternoon. All of you. No explanations. No emojis. No reassurance. Just facts. Sunday came. I cooked. Not because I had to, but because I wanted the house to feel familiar. Safe. The way it always had when they were growing up. They arrived one by one. My oldest walked in first. Arms crossed. Already defensive. My daughter followed, purse clutched tightly like a shield. The youngest came last, eyes darting around, clearly expecting bad news. We sat in the living room. No TV, no phones. I took a deep breath. I want to be clear, I began. This isn't about money. They exchanged looks. Then what is it? My daughter asked. It's about the relationship we have, I replied, and the one I refuse to keep having. Silence. I continued. I noticed a pattern. You don't call. You don't visit. You don't check in. But when you need something, you know exactly where to find me. My oldest sighed dramatically. Mom, you're overthinking this. No, I said firmly. I'm finally thinking clearly. That shut him up. I love you, I said. But love without effort becomes entitlement. And I've allowed that. The youngest shifted uncomfortably. So, are you going to help us or not? I nodded slowly. Yes, I said. Under conditions. All 3 of them straightened. What conditions? My daughter asked. I reached for the envelope on the coffee table. Inside were 3 printed pages, one for each of them. I'm not your emergency fund anymore, I said calmly. I'm your mother, and this is what I need if you want my help. They stared as I slid the pages across the table. You will call me, I said. Not when you need money, just to talk, at least once a week. My oldest scoffed. That's ridiculous, we're adults. So am I replied. And adults maintain relationships. No more skipped holidays, I continued. Mother's Day, birthdays, family dinners. If you're able-bodied and in town, you show up. The youngest frowned. What if we're busy? I met his eyes. Then you make time. Just like you make time when you need something. I will no longer be guilted, rushed, or manipulated, I said. If I say no, the answer is no. My daughter's eyes flashed. So you're threatening us? No, I said evenly. I'm protecting myself. They were quiet now. Not angry, unsettled. Because for the first time, the rules had changed, and they hadn't been the ones to set them. You can say no, I concluded. That's your right. But if you want my help, these are my terms. The room was thick with tension. My oldest stood up first. This is unbelievable, he said. You're making us jump through hoops for money? I looked up at him calmly. I'm asking for the bare minimum of respect. He shook his head. I can't believe this. He walked out. The door slammed behind him. My daughter stood next, eyes glossy but defiant. "I never thought you'd do this," she said quietly. "I never thought I'd have to," I replied. She left too. That left the youngest. He sat there for a long moment, staring at the paper. Finally, he looked up. "Mom," he said softly, "I didn't realize how bad it had gotten." I felt my throat tighten. "I don't want to lose you," he continued. "I can do this, all of it." I nodded, fighting tears. "Then we'll talk about the money," I said. He hugged me before he left, and for the first time in years, I felt like a mother again, not a resource. That night, my phone exploded. Messages from my oldest calling me selfish. Texts from my daughter accusing me of manipulation. But there was also one voicemail from my youngest. "Hey, Mom, just calling to say goodnight. Love you. No request, no urgency, just love." I went to bed knowing something important. I hadn't lost my children. I had finally stopped losing myself. But the real shock, it was still coming. Because when the oldest two realized I meant every word, they would make a move that forced me to choose between guilt and self-respect. And I chose self-respect. They didn't wait long to test me. By Monday morning, my phone was ringing before I'd finished my coffee. It was my oldest son. I watched the screen light up, feeling that familiar pull in my chest, the reflex to answer immediately, to fix whatever problem was coming. This time, I let it ring twice before picking up. "Mom," he said, not even pretending to sound calm, "we need to talk." "We already did," I replied evenly. "No, I mean really talk," he snapped. "Because what you did yesterday, that wasn't fair." I leaned back in my chair. "Tell me why." "You embarrassed us," he said. "You basically treated us like children." I almost laughed. Almost. "I treated you like adults," I corrected him. "Adults who are capable of maintaining a relationship." "That's not the point," he shot back. "The point is, you're holding money over our heads." "No," I said slowly. "I'm holding respect in my hands. The money is optional." There was a sharp silence on the line, followed by a bitter laugh. "So you're really not going to help me unless I jump through your hoops?" "My hoops," I repeated, "are phone calls, visits, and basic decency." "That's manipulation," he said. "You're guilt-tripping us." I felt something settle inside me then, a calm certainty. "Manipulation is pretending nothing's wrong while benefiting from someone's silence," I replied. "I'm just being honest." He raised his voice. "You know I'm struggling. And you know I've always helped," I said. "But you don't get to ignore me and still demand access to me." He hung up, again. I stared at the phone afterward, waiting for the familiar wave of guilt. It didn't come. Instead, I felt steady. That afternoon, my daughter tried a different approach. She showed up at my house, with tears already in her eyes. "I can't believe you'd do this to me," she said the moment I opened the door. "I'm drowning right now, Mom." I stepped aside and let her in. She sat at the kitchen table like she used to as a teenager, head in her hands, shoulders shaking. For a moment, my resolve wavered. This was my child, my baby. Then she spoke. "I mean, what kind of mother puts conditions on help?" she said, looking up at me accusingly. There it was. I sat across from her. "The kind who's been taken for granted for years," I answered quietly. She scoffed. "That's not true. We appreciate you." "When was the last time you called me just to talk?" I asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. "When was the last time you asked how I was doing?" I continued. "Not what I could do for you, but how I was?" Her eyes darted away. "I didn't think exactly," I said gently. "You didn't think about me, and I don't think you're a bad daughter. I think you're used to me being invisible." Her tears slowed. I forgot Mother's Day, she whispered. Yes, I said, and forgetting hurt. But what hurt more was realizing you didn't notice I was gone until you needed something. She wiped her face. So what, you're just gonna abandon us now? I shook my head. I'm still here. I'm just not available to be used. She sat quietly for a long time. Then she stood up, frustration replacing sadness. This is messed up, she said. Dad would never have done this. I met her eyes calmly. Your father left, I stayed. And staying doesn't mean sacrificing my dignity. She left without another word. That night, my youngest called again. Hey, Mom, he said. Just checking in. How was your day? I smiled. It was clarifying, I said. I talked to them, he admitted. They're really mad. I know, I said softly. But, he continued, I get it now. I really do. We talked for almost an hour. About work, about his plans, about nothing and everything. When we hung up, I realized something important. Setting boundaries doesn't push away people who love you. It exposes people who only love what you provide. 2 days later, the real test came. I received a message in the family group chat. Oldest, fine. If you won't help, I'll figure it out myself. Don't worry about me anymore. It was meant to punish me, to make me feel guilty. I typed one sentence back. I believe in you. That was it. Minutes later, my daughter sent her own message. Daughter, I can't believe money matters more to you than your kids. I didn't respond because I finally understood something that took me decades to learn. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always call your boundaries cruelty. And I was done arguing with that. That evening, I went to bed early again, not out of exhaustion, but peace. But the storm wasn't over, because when the money problems became real and no rescue came, they would show up again, not asking, demanding. And that's when I delivered the shock of their lives. 3 weeks passed. No calls from my oldest, no visits from my daughter. Only the steady, quiet presence of my youngest. A Sunday call here, a quick check-in there. Nothing dramatic, nothing forced. Just real. I didn't chase the others, didn't send reminders, didn't soften my words. I let the silence do what my explanations never could. Then, on a Thursday evening, the knock came. Hard, urgent, almost angry. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach tighten. Both of them. My oldest son stood on the left, jaw clenched, eyes dark with stress. My daughter stood beside him, arms wrapped around herself, mascara slightly smudged, like she'd been crying for a while. I opened the door. They didn't say hello. We need to talk, my son said flatly. I stepped aside and let them in. They didn't sit down. They paced. The energy in the room was sharp, frantic, nothing like the confident tone they'd used when asking me for money weeks ago. What's going on? I asked calmly. My daughter broke first. I'm about to lose my apartment, she said, voice shaking. I got a notice this morning. If I don't pay by Monday, I'm out. I nodded slowly. My son ran a hand through his hair. And I got hit with late fees. My landlord's done being patient. They both looked at me then, not with anger, with expectation. The old instinct flared, that automatic pull to save them. My heart beat faster. My hands felt warm. This was the moment I had always folded. But something had changed. I waited. So, my son said, irritation creeping back into his voice, are you going to help or not? I took a deep breath. I can help, I said, if you're willing to talk first. My daughter's shoulders slumped in relief. Yes, of course, anything. My son exhaled sharply. Fine, talk. I gestured to the couch. Sit. They hesitated, then obeyed. I sat across from them, hands folded in my lap. I want to ask you something, I began. In the last 3 weeks, how many times did you think about calling me just to check in? My daughter opened her mouth, then stopped. My son looked away. That's not fair, he muttered. It's honest, I replied. I was angry, my daughter said quietly. I felt like you were punishing us. And now? I asked. She swallowed. Now I'm scared. I nodded. Fear is honest too. My son leaned forward. Mom, we don't have time for this. We need help. And I don't have time to pretend nothing's wrong between us, I said. So we're going to talk, or I'm not writing a check. Silence fell heavy in the room. Finally, my daughter spoke again. I didn't realize how much I'd taken you for granted, she admitted. I just assumed you'd always be there. I am here, I said gently. But being here doesn't mean being invisible. My son scoffed softly. This still feels like you're choosing a point over your kids. I met his eyes. No, I said. I'm choosing to be your mother, not your bank. That hit him harder than he expected. I could see it in his face. I raised you to be independent, I continued, not dependent on my silence. I stood and walked to the drawer where I kept my checkbook. Both of them straightened. I pulled it out, then set it on the table between us. This, I said, tapping it lightly, has power only if I give it power. They watched me closely now. I will help you, I said, but not the way I used to. It means this money comes with accountability, I replied. Not control, but accountability. My son crossed his arms. Explain. I'll help cover part of what you owe, I said. Not all of it. You will handle the rest. Their relief was immediate, and then confusion. And, I continued, this is a one-time reset, not a pattern. My daughter nodded quickly. Okay, yes, that's fair. My son hesitated, and after that? After that, I said, our relationship continues based on effort, not emergencies. He let out a bitter laugh. So if we mess up once, you cut us off? No, I replied, but if you disappear again, I won't chase you. That landed. I kicked up the checkbook, then closed it. One more thing, I added. They both looked at me. You skipped Mother's Day, I said quietly, and that hurt more than you'll ever admit. My daughter's eyes filled again. I'm sorry, she whispered. I really am. My son swallowed hard. I didn't think it mattered that much. It mattered, I said, because I matter. I wrote 2 checks, handed them over. They stared at the amounts. This isn't enough, my son said automatically. It's enough to help, I replied. Not enough to erase responsibility. He looked at the paper again, then nodded slowly. Thank you, my daughter said, standing. Really? I walked them to the door. As they stepped outside, my son paused. Mom, he said quietly, I didn't expect this. I know, I replied. They left. I closed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding, not with regret, but relief. For the first time, I had helped without disappearing myself. But what I didn't know yet was that this wasn't the shock. It was only the beginning, because the next time they came back, it wouldn't be for money. It would be for something they never expected me to give. They didn't call the next day, or the day after that. For once, the quiet didn't feel like rejection. It felt like space. Space for them to struggle a little. Space for me to breathe a lot. I didn't wonder if they were okay. I knew they were adults, capable, learning. A week later, my youngest came over for dinner. He brought groceries without asking, cooked with me, cleaned up after. When he left, he hugged me longer than usual. Thanks for not giving up on us, he said softly. I held on to that sentence longer than the hug. 2 more weeks passed before my phone rang again. It was my daughter. Her voice sounded different. Not rushed, not panicked. Hey, Mom, she said. Do you have time to talk? I do, I replied. She hesitated. I just wanted to tell you. I figured it out. I picked up extra shifts. It's exhausting, but I'm okay. I'm proud of you, I said. She went quiet. And, she added, I wanted to ask if you'd like to have dinner this Sunday. Just us, no crisis. Something warmed in my chest. I'd love that, I said. After we hung up, I realized something small but powerful. She hadn't asked for anything. She had offered. My oldest took longer. He didn't call, didn't text, didn't acknowledge anything. And I let him. Because chasing someone who only comes back empty-handed teaches them nothing. Then one afternoon, nearly a month later, I received an email from my own son. It was short. Mom, I've been thinking a lot. I didn't like what you said, but I needed to hear it. I'm not okay yet, but I'm working on it. I don't know how to fix what I broke between us, but I want to try. I read it 3 times, then once more, before replying with one sentence. Trying is how fixing starts. The real shift didn't happen in a dramatic moment. It happened quietly. Phone calls became normal. Visits became intentional. Money stopped being the center of every conversation. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not because I was needed, but because I was wanted. Then came Father's Day. I hadn't even thought about it until my daughter called. We're doing a family dinner, she said. For you. For me? I asked, surprised. Yes, she replied, because you were both parents, and you deserve to be celebrated. I didn't trust my voice, so I didn't speak right away. When the day came, all 3 of them showed up. Flowers, a card, a cake that said, thank you. Not sorry. Thank you. My oldest lingered after dinner while the others cleaned up. I didn't know how to say this before, he said quietly, but I'm sorry for treating you like an option. I looked at him, really looked at him. I should have said something sooner, I replied. But you should have listened earlier. He nodded. Fair. We stood there for a moment, not fixed, not broken, just honest. Later that night, after they'd gone, I sat alone on the couch. Not lonely, just reflective. I thought about Mother's Day, about the silence, about the phone calls that only came with need attached. And then I thought about now. The difference wasn't money. It was boundaries. I hadn't shocked them by saying no. I shocked them by meaning it. But the story doesn't end there. Because a few months later, something happened that tested everything we had rebuilt. Something bigger than rent, bigger than pride, bigger than old habits. And the choice I made then proved that this wasn't just a lesson for them. It was a new life for me. The call came on a Tuesday morning, not frantic, not emotional, just heavy. It was my oldest son. Mom, he said quietly, I need to talk to you, in person. I didn't ask why. I didn't offer guesses. I'm home, I said. Come by. When he arrived, he looked older somehow. Not in years, in weight. The kind that settles on your shoulders when life stops cushioning your falls. He sat across from me at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug he hadn't touched. I messed up, he said finally. I waited. I lost my job, he continued. Company downsized, no warning. I nodded slowly. I'm sorry. He exhaled. I've been applying everywhere, nothing yet. He looked up at me then, and this time there was no expectation in his eyes, just fear. I'm not asking for money, he said quickly. I just didn't want to hide it from you. That alone told me everything had changed. Thank you for telling me, I said. He swallowed. I don't want to go back to how things were. Neither do I replied. We sat quietly for a moment. Then he spoke again. I think I treated you like you were supposed to catch me every time I fell, he said. and I never learned how to stand back up on my own. I felt tears rise, not because he was hurting, but because he was finally seeing. "You were learning," I said gently. "Late doesn't mean never." He nodded. "I'm scared," he admitted, "but I don't want shortcuts." That word, shortcuts, told me more than any apology could. I stood and walked to the fridge, pulling out leftovers. "Stay for lunch," I said. "We'll talk." Over the next few weeks, he showed up in ways that mattered. Not with problems, with presence. He came by to help fix a cabinet, called to tell me about an interview, asked for advice, not money. And every time he left, he said, "Thank you," not out of habit, out of respect. Then, life tested us again. This time, it wasn't about bills or rent. It was about health. I had been ignoring the fatigue for months, the dizziness, the way climbing stairs felt harder than it should. One afternoon, while grocery shopping, the room spun. I woke up on a hospital bed. Diagnosis wasn't dramatic, but it was serious enough. Nothing life-ending, but not nothing either. I needed rest, follow-up care, time. When I told my kids, their reactions told me everything about how far we'd come. My daughter canceled shifts to drive me to appointments. My youngest rearranged his schedule to check in daily. And my oldest, he moved in for 2 weeks. "I'll sleep on the couch," he said. "You're not doing this alone." He cooked, cleaned, sat with me during long afternoons when energy ran low. Not once did he complain. Not once did he ask for anything. One evening, as he washed dishes, he said quietly, "You shouldn't have had to get sick for us to show up." I met his eyes. "No," I said, "but I'm glad you're here now." Recovery forced me to slow down, to let others help, and that was the final shift. Learning that boundaries don't mean independence from love. They make room for it. Months passed. My strength returned. Life stabilized. Then one night, sitting together after dinner, my daughter asked a question that caught me off guard. "Mom," she said, "are you happy?" I thought about it. About Mother's Day. About the checks. About the silence. About now. "Yes," I said. "I am." She smiled softly. "You seem lighter." "I am," I replied, "because I stopped carrying what wasn't mine." But there was still one thing left unsaid. One moment that hadn't been addressed. And it came back around the following May. Mother's Day, again. This time, they didn't. But what they did instead was something none of us expected. Mother's Day came quietly that year. No balloons on mailboxes yet. No social media countdowns. Just an ordinary Sunday morning that felt different. I woke up early out of habit, made coffee, and sat at the same kitchen table where I'd once stared at my phone in silence. For a moment, the memory tried to creep back in. That old ache, that reflex to expect disappointment. Then the doorbell rang. At 8 in the morning, I frowned, wiped my hands on a towel, and walked to the door. When I opened it, all 3 of them were standing there. My daughter held a small bouquet of tulips. My youngest had a bakery box tucked under his arm, and my oldest held nothing. At least, not in his hands. "Happy Mother's Day," they said together. My throat tightened instantly. I stepped aside, letting them in. The house filled with movement, familiar sounds I hadn't realized I'd missed. Coffee cups being poured, the bakery box opening, laughter over who forgot forks. My oldest disappeared down the hallway. "Where are you going?" I called. "You'll see," he replied. A few minutes later, he came back carrying something framed. He placed it on the table gently and turned it toward me. It was a photo. Not a new one, an old one. Me, years ago, sitting on the front steps of our old house. Hair pulled back, tired eyes, youngest on my lap. the other two leaning against me. I remembered that day. We'd been late for school, broke, stressed, but laughing anyway. I found it in a box, he said quietly. I didn't realize how much you held together until I saw this. I covered my mouth. I always thought you were just strong, my daughter added. I didn't see how much it cost you. My youngest nodded. We didn't mean to make you disappear. Tears slid down my face freely now. I didn't will. This, my oldest continued, voice unsteady, is us saying we see you. They hadn't bought me anything extravagant. No jewelry, no expensive gift. They had brought awareness, and it meant everything. We spent the day together, not rushed, not distracted. They cooked, cleaned, sat with me, asked questions, real ones. What was the hardest year? When did you feel the most alone? What do you wish you'd done differently? And for the first time, I answered honestly, not to guilt them, but to connect. Later that afternoon, as we sat in the living room, my daughter reached for my hand. Thank you for not cutting us off, she said, even when you had every right to. I didn't want distance, I replied. I wanted balance. My oldest nodded slowly. You changed us. I smiled softly. No, I changed myself. You just responded. That evening, after they left, I placed the framed photo on my shelf, right where I could see it every day, not as a reminder of sacrifice, but of growth. A week later, my daughter sent a message in the group chat. Daughter, just checking in. How are you feeling today? No emergency, no agenda, just presence. My youngest sent one later that night. Youngest, saw something that reminded me of you. My oldest followed the next morning. Oldest, coffee this weekend? I stared at the screen, smiling. The shock of their lives hadn't been the money. It had been the moment they realized their mother was a person, not a guarantee. But the story wasn't over yet, because a few months later, something happened that forced me to make one last decision. A decision that proved whether everything we'd built was real or just temporary. And this time, the test wouldn't come from them. It would come from me. It started with an envelope. Plain, white, no return address. I found it in my mailbox one afternoon and almost threw it away with the rest of the junk mail. Something made me pause, maybe instinct, maybe the way my name was written carefully, like someone didn't want to get it wrong. Inside was a letter and a check. The letter was short. I heard what you did for your kids. I don't know if you remember me, but I could really use your help. Just this once. The check was postdated. The amount was significant. Not from my children, from my sister. We hadn't spoken in years. Our relationship had always been complicated. She was older, louder, always in crisis. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the fixer, the peacemaker, the one who lent money and smoothed things over. When I finally stopped rescuing her years ago, she disappeared. No calls, no holidays, no apologies. And now, suddenly, she was back, asking. I folded the letter carefully and set it on the table, and I realized something uncomfortable. This wasn't about money. This was the final test of everything I had learned. That evening, I told my kids. We were having dinner together. Casual, midweek, nothing special. I waited until we'd finished eating before placing the envelope on the table. My daughter read the letter first. Her eyebrows lifted. Wow. My youngest whistled softly. That's a lot. My oldest stayed quiet, reading carefully. What are you going to do? My daughter asked. I didn't answer right away, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure. My oldest finally spoke. She disappeared when you stopped helping, he said. Now she's back because she needs something. I nodded. My daughter looked concerned. You don't owe her anything. I know, I said. My youngest leaned forward. But it's still family. That word again. Family. I took a breath. I've spent most of my life being the person everyone comes to when they're desperate, I said. And I've confused generosity with obligation. They listened, really listened. I don't want to become someone who only knows how to say no, I continued. But I also don't want to disappear again. Silence settled over the table. My daughter reached for my hand. You taught us that help shouldn't erase the helper, she said quietly. That applies to you too. I smiled. I didn't cash the check. I didn't tear it up either. Instead, I wrote my sister back. I told her I was willing to talk, not send money, talk. I included my phone number. A week passed. Then another. Then my phone rang. I recognized her voice immediately, older, strained, but still familiar. I didn't think you'd respond, she said. I'm willing to listen, I replied. Not rescue. She sighed. I'm not good at this, she admitted. I always relied on you. I know, I said gently. And that's why it stopped. We talked for an hour. No yelling, no accusations. Just truth. She told me what she'd lost. I told her what I'd learned. When the call ended, I felt something loosen inside me. Not obligation. Closure. I never sent the money, but I didn't disappear either. We began speaking occasionally, carefully, slowly, on my terms. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone again. Same house, same quiet, but this time the silence felt earned, peaceful. I thought about Mother's Day, about the checks, about the boundaries, and I realized something simple and powerful. The shock of their lives wasn't when I said no. It was when I stayed, whole. There was only one truth that wrapped the entire story together, and I said it out loud. I matter too. The ending didn't arrive with fireworks. No dramatic confrontation. No final argument. No door slamming shut. It came quietly, the way real change usually does. On an ordinary Sunday afternoon, we were all together again, sitting in the backyard. The weather was warm, the kind that invites you to stay a little longer than planned. My daughter was talking about a promotion she was working toward. My youngest was teasing her about always being the responsible one now. My oldest stood by the grill, humming under his breath. At one point, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I didn't feel that old rush anymore, that reflex to answer, to fix, to save. I let it ring. My oldest noticed. You okay? He asked. I smiled. Yeah, I just don't answer every call anymore. He nodded, understanding exactly what that meant. Later, as the sun dipped lower, my daughter leaned back in her chair. Mom, she said casually, you know what's weird? What? I asked. You don't seem tired all the time anymore. The words hit me harder than anything else had, because she was right. I wasn't tired in that deep, invisible way. I stopped carrying things that weren't mine, I said simply. My youngest raised his glass. To Mom, he said, for teaching us something way later than expected, but better late than never. They laughed, clinked glasses, and I felt something settle in my chest. Pride. Not the kind that demands applause. The kind that comes from knowing you chose yourself without abandoning anyone else. A few weeks later, Mother's Day photos popped up in my memories. From years ago. I didn't skip past them. I looked at them calmly. The woman in those pictures looked tired, hopeful, quietly waiting to be noticed. I wished I could reach through the screen and tell her something. It's okay to stop proving your worth. That evening, my oldest stopped by alone. He held a small envelope. This isn't money, he said quickly. Before you panic. I laughed. Inside was a note. Just a note. Thank you for staying, and it would have been easier to disappear. Thank you for teaching me how to stand without leaning on you. I see you now. I folded it carefully and placed it beside the framed photo. 2 reminders. One of who I was, one of who I became. If you're watching this and thinking, this feels too familiar, let me tell you something I wish I'd learned sooner. Being a good parent doesn't mean being endlessly available. Being loving doesn't mean being silent. And saying no doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you finally start respecting yourself. They skipped Mother's Day. They asked me for money, and the shock of their lives was discovering that the woman they'd overlooked was still there, just no longer invisible.